Hey everybody, I'm John Hazel, automation expert and business strategist.
And I'm Kevin Miller, software lead and seasoned podcaster.
And this is the Automate and Elevate podcast where we help you build systems, create leverage, and scale your business.
And on today's episode, we're going to explore some techniques on building websites in 2026. Let's get started, John. I know you have a unique process of building websites in 2026. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how did that differ from your process, let's just say 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. So I've been building websites. I did a lot of WordPress websites in the 2010s. And my process with that, like early on, I would go on themeforest.net and like find a theme that I felt like picked that fit the client or whatever project I was working on pretty well. I'd pick that theme, I would adapt it to that client. I would have to dabble in the PHP code quite a bit to get certain things working the way we wanted. And then in the late 2010s, I discovered some great page building tools on WordPress like Beaver Builder, Elementor, Divi, and I would do that quite a bit. And even in the early 2020s, would do like Divi and build websites on WordPress with that. And this was a way, even though I could code, it didn't always not every project makes sense to like build on code from scratch, especially like the clients, some working with small businesses and nonprofits, and so I would I would do that, right? But like my design process was very like integrated with like the content and the strategy and all of that. Like I would have a lot of conversations with the client and then I would get in and just like start building. I wouldn't necessarily like wireframe out and plan a strategy. I would just start building. So my process has always been very integrated. Now with AI, my process changes about every 3 months because new models get released every like 3 to 6 months with AI. So the process kind of changes. But what I'm doing now is I start with Claude. So I'll create if I don't already have a project for the client in Claude, I'll create a project. I'll put as much context in that project as possible. So if they have an existing website, I'll go on their existing website. I actually have a crawler that will automatically crawl their website and pull all the text content and like compress it, but you don't even need that. Like if you have an existing website, just go on the homepage, press Control A or Command A, select all, and then copy that, and you can paste that into your Claude project as context. So I'll get the context there, and then I'll say, okay, Claude, like here's what I'm trying to build. Here's the goals. I want to use the StoryBrand framework. I also want you to research the top three thought leaders in the web design space. And then depending on what kind of website I'm working on, like say it's an e-commerce website, I'll say top three thought leaders in the e-commerce space, top three thought leaders in the marketing space. So what I'm doing there is instead of having my AI be kind of like the average of the entire internet, I'm now making it the average of the top 20% of the internet, of like the higher quality stuff, right? Because I'm saying I want you to tap into these different thought leaders. I want you to leverage StoryBrand. And then I'll have it do in Claude, you can press the little plus button and activate research mode. So I'll have it do deep research. And so I'll say, like, I'm trying to build this website. I want to create a plan for this. I want you to build out a StoryBrand brand script and a text-based wireframe for the home page of this website. And I'll have it do a deep research. So it's looking into all those thought leaders. It's looking into if there's any context about what we're building that's already online. It's going to research that stuff. And then I'll have it build that out. That's going to run for about 20 minutes. When it's done, I will take that whole thing, I drop it into Gemini because Gemini has a very large context window. Or I could open a new Claude chat and set it to Opus 4.6, and that's a pretty big context window, and it might be able to consume all that context. So I might put it in there, and then I'll say, take this and build a prompt for lovable.dev. Lovable.dev is a website generator, really a web app generator. It creates websites on React, and I'll say build a prompt that where Lovable will still have creative freedom, but it will work if there's existing brand guidelines. I'll say it needs to work within the existing brand guidelines, and I'll put those in there. Like if, hey, we always use these colors, we always use these fonts, whatever. I'll say build a prompt for lovable.dev. So then now, because Lovable can't take that huge research that Claude did, right? That would be way too much context. But I'll shrink that down, compress that into something. So what we're doing, like when we're working with agentic AI, the key is we don't have time to review everything, right? Like that's the whole point of agentic AI, is like it needs to go out and do some things, and then we're able to see the results. And so in order to do that effectively, you have to have these filtering processes where it's like, hey, I want you to do a ton of research, and then I want to get that narrowed down into something that's actionable. And so then it goes into lovable.dev, and then you just say generate this website. You can sometimes, I will set Lovable to plan mode, but usually I've already built out the plan, so I just need Lovable to execute. And then for iterations, I might use plan mode on Lovable. So then Lovable is going to run for 10 to 20 minutes and build out that homepage. And I usually just start with the homepage, and then we're going to build out from there. But trying to tackle the entire website, unless it's a very small, simple website, it usually makes sense to start with the homepage and then iterate later. And so then Lovable is going to generate something. Now, in the last week, I did like a similar process to this a couple times, except I didn't do the deep research. I just brainstormed something with Claude, put it into Lovable, dissatisfied with the results. Tried again, brainstormed with Claude, put it into Lovable, dissatisfied with the results. So then I did the process that I just laid out for you, and the results were great. So the problem was my original, what Claude was doing was it was being too prescriptive for Lovable. And so Lovable was trying to follow the exact steps that Claude put in there, and it didn't come out looking good. So when I did the deep research with Claude and I dropped that in Gemini and said, build out a prompt for Lovable, and I allowed Lovable to have some creative freedom, it came out great. And I only went through maybe an hour of iterations, and I had the prototype for the website that I wanted. Now, in this case, I used Lovable. I used this entire process to prototype a website, even if it's ultimately going to be on Shopify or WordPress or Wix or any other platform. I'll have it prototype it, and then I'll take it to my team member, or I'll take it to Cursor, and I'll what's called refactor it into the code that I need it to be for Shopify or whatever. But most of the time, if I can help it, I'm just publishing straight from Lovable because it's so convenient, and then it's so easy to update. I just go in there and I prompt and say, make this change, and it's done. And so I have several websites that I've just published straight from Lovable. Other times I use it to prototype for other platforms. But yeah, that's pretty much my process. I will say the thing that was the most time consuming is I had to select which photos I wanted to use. Sometimes the AI generated photos in Lovable are great, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. Other times I need to go generate some AI images in ChatGPT, or I need to pull from an existing photo library, and I have to curate those photos. And those are the things where I'll use AI to support it. For example, I dropped 4 images into Claude, and I said, which one of these should be the hero image? But even then, I ended up choosing a different image than what Claude suggested. So it's not super great at that, but in theory, you could use Claude Cowork to curate photos for it and upload those. Yeah, so then by the end of that, I have a website that was ready to show the client as a prototype. And then we had some feedback on that. And then I just like listed out those changes, drop them into Lovable and execute. That's
So
it.
are you getting a similar level of reception from the client that you were when you were doing it by hand, like in terms of
Absolutely.
satisfaction?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm able to do it, you know, in a quarter or a tenth of the timeline that I was before, or some it was even less, right? And it's actually even better because I'm going through usually I'm going through several processes with Claude. I kind of compress that in the way I just described this, but usually I'm building out the brand script first. I'm doing that deep research and I'm like solidifying the brand script because then that's the foundation that I'm building off of for the communication and the layout of the website. Um, now, one of the things I encountered was um, Claude wanted to build that out and Lovable wanted to build that out where it was like a very story brand oriented homepage, but I needed it to be e-commerce as well. So I also had to say, take best practices from the layout of e-commerce website. Oh, and I did a separate Claude chat and I said, who are the top 5 e-com websites in the health and wellness space? Top 5 like revenue grossing as far as we can tell, right? And so I got like those and I kind of looked at those and I included that on the deep research and I said like include elements of these websites. I chose like 3 of them that I was like, okay, these feel aligned with our brand that I'm working on. And I put those in the prompt so that it was like, okay, here's some examples I can use and pull from, right? And so I usually go through, I'll spend maybe up to like 2 to 3 hours of this kind of preparation of like going back and forth with Claude to nail down the brand script, to nail down the text wireframe, and like just you want to get that plan really excellent. So then by the time you get to Lovable and you're actually building the website, a lot of times in one shot, it's like 90% of the way there. And then you're just like, there was one section that I was like, I still don't like how this section is laying out. I took it back to Claude and I said, what are 3 different ideas of ways we can change the way this works? And 2 of the options it was 4 options it gave me. 2 of the options I really liked. I said, now I took that to Lovable and I said, build these 2 back to back. And then one of them was the clear winner, right? So there's still this like iterative process you go through when you're trying to make it ideal, but you save so much time. And honestly, AI helps me like build out a stronger brand script and build the wireframe around that than I did when I was doing it by myself, because I now have this thought partner to go back and forth with.
So look at what point does your human team get involved? Like AI is doing this, and then your developers. When are they starting to touch the code?
Yeah. So if the website's being deployed on Lovable, then usually I do this first round, and then there's like a list of tasks that need to be changed. And so I put that in Asana, my project management tool, and I assign those to my team member. They have access to the Lovable project, and I let them do the rest of those edits, right? If the project is not being deployed on Lovable, if it's like a Shopify site and Lovable is just the prototype, I take it to my developers and I say, refactor this into a Shopify theme or a WordPress theme or whatever it is, right? And sometimes, I mean, we have clients that are on Squarespace, so there's no code involved there. They have to literally go in on the page and like drag and drop, build out the page for that, right? So this is where, like AI is not going to solve all of your problems. It can solve a lot of your problems, but if you're not willing to delegate to humans, you're still going to slow yourself down a lot. So you can build out. There's like a balance, right? Because I'm an inventor, and so I've always like I'll see something and I'll be like, I can optimize, and then eventually I get to something where I'm like, this is fully optimized. There's nothing else I can do with it, and then I'm kind of like bored at that point. I'm like, but I want to keep up because I'm like, I enjoy inventing for the sake of inventing. The results is like actually less important to me. It's the process of like optimizing things. And so I've learned about myself that like I can get too caught up in that, and I could try to automate everything in my business with AI, but if I do that, then I'm not spending time focused on sales and revenue. So I have to like balance my time between automating things, teaching my team member. Most of the time, I'm trying to teach my team members how to automate things so that they can do that and I can keep focusing on the things that are going to scale the business up.
So you've used this like a lot for the technical side of things, but are you also using this on the revenue side and sales and marketing, things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this podcast, right? I'm going to download it and I'm going to upload it to Opus Clip and have AI clip it up and use that for social media. Um, I use Claude to strategize my marketing plans. I use Claude in my sales conversations. By the way, here's a really important thing that kind of released on Claude recently called Skills. And there's been several efforts at this. Really skilled AI users have been building their own libraries of prompts and like prompt context. I have a folder on my computer called AI Context Knowledge. And in there, I have a bunch of text files that's just like, if I'm working on this, I can drag this text file in. And that's advantageous because then I can switch between different I can use ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, whatever, and I can switch between these different models and I can just drag that text file in and it's got the context of like, here's my tone and how I email. The key with that one is I give like 5 examples of real world emails that I've written and I actually have them categorized. I have like, here's when I'm in a sales conversation, these are what my emails look like. When I'm talking to a client, these are what they look like. When I'm talking to someone I know really well, here's what my emails look like, right? So I created like these text files. Well, now that's built into Claude. There's a customize tab on the left side when you're on the desktop app or the website. I'm not sure, I don't think it's on the mobile app, but and if you click customize and you click skills, you can see there's some default skills in there, but then you can add personal skills and you can manually add a skill. You can browse and download skills that other people have created. But my favorite way to create a skill is I just chat with Claude. I'll like prepare for a conversation with a prospective client and I'll be like having Claude do research. I'll have it help me like, plan out the negotiation and all these things. And then at the end, I'll say, this is great. Please build a skill for this so we can recreate it next time easily. And next time I'm not having to just kind of flow back and forth with Claude. Next time Claude's taking me through a very specific process of like, great, we've got this nailed down, this nailed down. So it's really just like creating these processes and checklists in the form of a skill. You're creating these context knowledges. What's really cool about the way it's built into Claude is that Claude will intelligently pull on that skill. So when I ask Claude, hey, draft me an email response to this person, it knows to go to my email skill and pull that stuff. I don't have to drag that into the context. I don't think about it. It already has like a index, like a table of contents about which skills are available to it. And that's included on every time you're talking to it. So it already knows, oh, here's a tool I can call on, right? Extremely valuable for email drafting, websites, everything that I do.
Awesome. I think it's a great stopping point for this episode. Before we get out of here, what did you want to leave our audience with? What should they keep in mind going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, I just gave you my process for free. To be honest, that process is probably going to change in 3 to 6 months because the tools are constantly changing, the models are changing, there's new tools on the market. And if you try that process and it doesn't work out, you're not happy with the results, you can hire me to consult with you. If you're like, okay, I feel comfortable with this, but I'm just not super stoked about the results, like reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's schedule a time where I can review it and just give you some guidance. If you're like, hey, this process sounds great, but I don't have time, I don't want to do it, reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's see if I can help. But ultimately, like, find ways that you can use AI in your daily workflow. If there's one thing that you're going to take away from this conversation, please use Claude Skills. And please start like just when you have a chat where you you go really far, you go really deep, you get a lot done with Claude, say, hey, create a skill from this, and it'll do it. And it's going to make you far more efficient and effective.
Awesome. And we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.